Fed policy has a lag, right? The Fed pulls a lever and it takes a certain period of time, usually measured in quarters, 3, 4 quarters before that's really manifested in the economy. So you just said the Fed really pumped the brakes hard, right? Starting, 2 quarters ago or something like that. And it's while we're seeing some of the evidence of slowdown in the economy that you mentioned at the beginning of this conversation, the impact of a lot of that is still yet to be felt, right?
Yes.
And the Fed may continue hiking rates along the way, right? So there's going to be this rolling thunder in the future of the arrival of the impacts of this. You also talked about how historically fast the Fed has raised rates so far, right? And I've used this analogy a couple of times on this channel. I don't think I've mentioned it to you yet, though, which is the rate of change is really important here. And a way to understand that is Stephanie, if I gave you a gallon of water and gave you a week to drink it, you'd have no problem doing that. But if I just shoved it up against your face and forced it all down your throat at once, you drown, right? And I think that there's an apt analogy in that. And that's sort of what we've done, right, with these historically fast rate hikes, the impact of which hasn't really hit in full yet, right? So we may have kind of like a heart attack moment, for the economy still ahead of us, given what's already happened to date. And like I said, the Fed may continue hiking. So by the time the Fed may continue hiking into this heart attack moment and then realize, oh my gosh, we've totally overslowed the economy. Now we got to reverse course.
Right.
Do you sort of see the danger of what I've just described sort of playing out over the next couple quarters?
Absolutely. I've had this kind of radical thesis about the path of Fed policy since I first started talking about raising rates, and phooey on me because I ended up getting it wrong. But my idea was that just tapering their balance sheet was going to result in a significant slowdown in the economy, because this is really simple and not a secret. The U.S. economy requires ever expanding amounts of credit to go forward. So if credit creation in 2022 is the same as it was in 2021, the economy will slow. It consumes more credit. It gets worse miles per gallon, let's say, over time, because we pass diminishing marginal returns on each dollar, probably, I would assume, because of each dollar, more and more is going to debt service now,
Right.
than productive uses. So anyway, that's sort of the big picture, is that the economy has to get the fuel in the tank, the credit fuel in the tank. And by tapering its balance sheet, basically the Fed was siphoning that fuel. Now it's adding rate hikes on top of that. So to me, the rate hikes, as I said earlier, it doesn't really matter how much they do from here. They've already done too much, in my view. I mean, they're going to really quash growth. I happen to think we're in recession already. And I do think that given the magnitude of rate hikes we've seen so far, we're headed for a repeat of a 2008 type of scenario. But they're also now shrinking their balance sheet. So we've got a combination of factors. And importantly as well, I guess to mention, they're not the only ones. This isn't unique to the US. It's not like the US is tightening and the rest of the world is pumping money into the financial markets, so the liquidity game continues. It's really a global phenomenon. So I guess my feeling is that as to whether or not the Fed might overdo it, I think they already have. And to your point, it's just that we haven't been hit by the 2x4 yet, but it's coming. And going back to the corporate credit thing, I just did an overlay of junk yields versus the speculative grade default rate to figure out, what's the lead time between interest rate increases and how long it takes for the pipeline of defaults to start to, for the defaults to come out the pipeline. And it's 12 months. So the bottom in junk yields was last September, which means in the next month or so, we should start to see that default rate tick up. And maybe that will, act as a little harness on this stock market rally, if people actually pay attention to it, and don't dismiss it as isolated and contained or whatever phraseology we end up using this time around. But Yeah, I mean, to answer your point, I think clearly the Fed is going to overdo it. I mean that's a layup of a bet because that's what they've done every time before. So I'm just going to go with the probabilities here.
If you enjoyed this video clip, click here to watch another one you should like.